The grand chamber of the Galactic Council pulsed with an ancient metallic energy. Holographic displays flickered around massive crystalline columns, each representing a different star-spanning civilization that had governed interstellar politics for millennia. Delegates from 100 worlds sat in their designated spaces, their exotic physiologies a testament to the diversity of sentient life. Ambassador Zixtar of the Korean Collective rose, their iridescent exoskeleton catching the light of 1,000 artificial suns. The chamber fell silent, the anticipation thick enough to cut with a quantum blade. This was to be a historic moment, the formal assessment of humanity's place in the galactic hierarchy. Representatives of the Unified Galactic Confederation, Zixtar began, their translator rendering the words in a dozen simultaneous languages. We have completed our comprehensive analysis of the human species. Behind Zixtar, a massive holographic display began to show a montage of human activity, military conflicts, technological developments, social upheavals. Each image was carefully selected to paint humanity as chaotic, primitive, and fundamentally unready for true galactic citizenship. After extensive deliberation, the ambassador continued, mandibles clicking with calculated precision. The Council has determined that humanity shall be classified as a probationary species. Effective immediately, human technological development will be restricted. Space exploration beyond their local solar system is forbidden. Interstellar communication will be monitored and controlled. The chamber hummed with a mixture of satisfaction and mild contempt. Most delegates had seen this coming. Another young species being put in its place, another potential threat neutralized before it could truly emerge. What none of them noticed was the slight shimmer in the holographic systems, a nearly imperceptible flutter of digital interference. Kaijon, a 27-year-old quantum communications specialist hidden in a nondescript research facility on Earth's moon, was about to make history. His fingers danced across a custom-built quantum interface, lines of code weaving through the galactic broadcast like invisible threads. As Zixtar continued the proclamation, detailing the extensive restrictions that would suffocate human potential, Kay's hack began to take effect. Subliminal messages started to embed themselves between the broadcast's frames, too quick for alien sensors to detect, but perfectly readable to human perception. The messages were simple, elegant, and devastating. They fear us. We are not alone. Resistance is innovation. In research labs, military installations, and living rooms across Earth, humans watching the broadcast would receive these messages directly into their subconscious. A spark of defiance, a unified sense of purpose, was being planted in real time. Zixtar's final words rang out. The Galactic Council hereby declares humanity a subordinate species, subject to immediate and comprehensive regulatory control. The broadcast cut out. For precisely 3 seconds, the council chamber was silent. Then all hell broke loose. Alien communication networks began to experience inexplicable glitches. Quantum communication relays started to pulse with random interference. The very systems designed to control and monitor human activity were subtly, brilliantly compromised. Back on Earth, in underground research facilities and high-tech command centers, teams were already in motion. The proclamation wasn't a death sentence, it was a starting gun. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, watching the broadcast from a secure facility in Sao Paulo, allowed herself the briefest of smiles. The game had begun, and humanity was about to show the galaxy exactly what it meant to be underestimated. Well, she muttered to herself, this should be interesting. Little did the Galactic Council know that their declaration of subordination was about to become the most spectacular own goal in interstellar history. 48 hours after the Galactic Council's proclamation, the world watched as humanity appeared to roll over in complete submission. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood before a carefully selected international committee, her presentation a masterpiece of calculated acquiescence. The conference room was a study in controlled performance. Delegates from every major nation sat in meticulously arranged seats, their expressions crafted to convey a mixture of defeated resignation and professional composure. Behind Alina, holographic displays showed elaborate compliance charts, detailed regulatory frameworks, and what seemed to be a comprehensive plan for adhering to the Galactic Council's restrictions. "We will, of course, comply fully with the Council's directives," Alina announced, her voice a perfect blend of professional detachment and subtle undertone of resignation. Each word was chosen with surgical precision, each gesture calculated to convince the most discerning observer of humanity's total capitulation. What no one in the room knew was that Alina's presentation was itself an elaborate piece of misdirection. Beneath the Sao Paulo Conference Center, a network of hidden research facilities hummed with unprecedented activity. What appeared to be abandoned mining tunnels had been transformed into a labyrinth of cutting-edge research stations. Teams of scientists, engineers, and specialists worked in carefully compartmentalized units, each group focusing on a specific aspect of human resistance. In an old lithium mine converted to a quantum research center, Dr. Marcus Chen reviewed a set of schematics that would make the Galactic Council's sensors short-circuit if they could see them. The plans looked like standard infrastructure designs, until you looked closer. Every architectural element was a potential communication node, every seemingly mundane piece of equipment a component of a massive distributed computing network. "Remember," Chen whispered to his team, "we're building a fortress that looks like a paperclip." Across the globe, similar operations were taking place. In the Australian outback, a decommissioned satellite array was being slowly, meticulously repurposed. What appeared to be routine maintenance was actually the construction of the most sophisticated communication interceptor in human history. In the depths of the Siberian tundra, a research facility that looked like nothing more than a weather monitoring station was developing quantum communication technologies that would make alien networks look like children's walkie-talkies. Alina's presentation continued, a masterclass in bureaucratic theater. She detailed extensive compliance protocols, showed intricate diagrams of how human technological development would be scaled back, and presented what appeared to be a comprehensive plan for total submission. The real message was hidden in plain sight. Each slide contained microsecond-long data bursts, invisible to standard detection methods. To the untrained eye, they were nothing more than visual artifacts. To the underground network of human resistance, they were coded instructions, progress reports, and coordination mechanisms. "We understand," Alina concluded, her final words carrying a weight that no alien translator could fully comprehend, "that we must know our place in the galactic community." In that moment, every human watching knew exactly what she meant. Our place was not at the bottom of some alien-defined hierarchy, but wherever humanity chose to be. As the presentation concluded, delegates from around the world nodded solemnly. The Galactic Council would receive reports of total human compliance. They had no idea that compliance was the most elaborate Trojan horse in interstellar history. Deep beneath the surface, humanity was just getting started. The test chamber looked like something between a museum piece and a technological nightmare. Antiquated computer systems from the early 2000s stood alongside cutting-edge quantum processors, all connected by a web of cables that seemed to defy both logic and electrical engineering standards. Dr. Marcus Chen surveyed the setup with a predatory grin that would have terrified the Galactic Council had they been able to see it. "Restricted technological parameters," he muttered to his team, "meet human creativity." The Galactic Council's technological assessment was designed to be a humiliation. Each emerging species was given a deliberately limited set of resources and outdated equipment, then challenged to solve a series of increasingly complex technological problems. The goal was always the same: demonstrate the species' fundamental inadequacy, prove their inability to compete with established galactic technologies. They had no idea what was coming. The challenge seemed impossible on the surface. The testing committee had provided a collection of seemingly incompatible technologies: an old IBM desktop from 2005, a quantum processing unit with 80% of its capabilities artificially restricted, and a set of communication protocols that were deliberately designed to create maximum interference. Most species would have surrendered immediately. Chen's team was not most species. Dr. Aisha Okonkwo, the team's quantum entanglement specialist, began to work her magic. Where other scientists would see a collection of incompatible systems, she saw a puzzle. Her fingers flew across multiple interfaces, creating bridges between technologies that were never meant to communicate. "We're not trying to break the rules," she explained to her teammates, her voice low and intense. "We're rewriting the entire concept of what rules mean." The first test involved creating a stable quantum communication channel using nothing but the restricted equipment. The Galactic Council's observers watched through carefully monitored interfaces, expecting nothing more than a spectacular failure. Instead, they got a demonstration that would haunt their technological nightmares. Chen and Okonkwo had discovered something fundamental. The restrictions themselves were the key to innovation. By forcing themselves to work with seemingly inadequate tools, they were pushing the boundaries of what was possible in ways no established civilization could comprehend. The quantum communication channel they built wasn't just functional, it was revolutionary. Using a combination of quantum entanglement, repurposed signal processing algorithms, and what could only be described as technological judo, they created a communication method that was simultaneously so simple and so complex that the alien observers couldn't even begin to understand its mechanics. "Transmission initiated," Okonkwo announced, her voice calm. The data stream that emerged defied every known principle of communication. It was encrypted, but not in any way the Council's analysts could detect. It was distributed across multiple bandwidths, but appeared to use less energy than a standard household appliance. It could transmit massive amounts of information through what appeared to be nothing more than background noise. In the observation room, alien technological assessors began to look nervous. This wasn't just solving a problem. This was redefining the entire concept of the problem. As the final test concluded, Dr. Chen looked up at the monitoring cameras with a smile that was equal parts scientific triumph and barely contained mischief. "Compliance," he said softly, "is such an interesting word." The Galactic Council had wanted to prove humanity's technological inferiority. Instead, they had just witnessed the first glimpse of humanity's true potential. The Galactic Exchange Program looked, on the surface, like a perfect method of control. Each participating species would send carefully selected representatives to other civilizations, ostensibly to promote understanding. For the Galactic Council, it was another tool of suppression, a way to monitor and limit the spread of potentially dangerous cultural ideas. They had no idea that humanity was about to turn this program into its most potent weapon. Zara Nazari stepped off the transport shuttle, her hijab elegantly draped, a quantum-encrypted translator nestled almost invisibly behind her ear. To the alien immigration officials, she appeared to be just another human representative. Professional, slightly nervous, carefully controlled. In reality, she was a cultural systems analyst with a background in anthropology, linguistics, and memetic engineering that would make most intelligence agencies look like amateur hobbyists. The destination was Nexus Prime, the most cosmopolitan trading hub in the Orient sector, a massive space station that served as a melting pot for over 200 sentient species. It was the perfect testing ground for human adaptability. Within 48 hours of arrival, Zara had done something unprecedented. She didn't just learn the local languages. She began to understand them in ways no previous species had ever managed. Each conversation was a multilayered investigation, each interaction a potential vector for cultural information exchange. The Korean traders who first encountered her were confused. Their standard interaction protocols, designed to maintain a strict hierarchical distance, kept falling apart. Zara would ask a simple question about trade regulations and somehow end up discussing the deep cultural significance of a Korean family inheritance ritual. She collected stories like other people collected souvenirs. Not just the words, but the emotional context, the unspoken rules, the subtle power dynamics that existed between the lines of communication. Meanwhile, other human representatives were doing the same thing across multiple alien societies. It wasn't espionage in any traditional sense. It was something far more subtle and dangerous. They were learning, and in learning, they were transforming. On the commerce decks of Nexus Prime, human traders began to appear. Not the brash, aggressive negotiators that most alien species expected, but something entirely different. They understood more than just the economic value of a transaction. They understood its cultural context. A human trader negotiating with a Xyloxian merchant wouldn't just discuss price. They'd discuss the merchant's family history, reference local cultural idioms, make connections that went far beyond simple economic exchange. The aliens didn't just respect these humans. They began to genuinely like them. Communication channels that had been formal and rigid for centuries started to become something else. Flexible, adaptive, almost alive. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, monitoring the initial reports from a secure facility on Earth, allowed herself a small smile. This was more than cultural exchange. This was cultural infiltration of the most elegant kind. The Galactic Council had tried to limit humanity's reach. Instead, they had just opened every possible door. By the end of the first month, something extraordinary had happened. Humans weren't just participants in the galactic community. They were becoming its most fascinating conversationalists, its most intriguing newcomers, and they were just getting started. In the observation rooms of 100 alien administrative centers, bureaucrats began to look at their reports and feel something they hadn't felt in centuries. Genuine, unexpected curiosity. The trading floor of the Interstellar Economic Exchange looked like a scene from a fever dream. Holographic displays flickered with countless market indicators. Alien traders from 100 different species moved in complex patterns, and at the center of it all stood Marcus Rodriguez, a human trader who was about to rewrite the rules of galactic economics. No one had seen him coming. The Galactic Council's economic restrictions were supposed to be airtight. Limitations on human market access, strict caps on trading volumes, carefully monitored transaction channels, all designed to keep humanity financially marginalized. Marcus Rodriguez was about to turn those restrictions into the most elaborate economic judo match in galactic history. His first move was deceptively simple. While other traders focused on massive resource-intensive trades, Marcus began dealing in what seemed like economic noise, small, seemingly insignificant transactions that most species would ignore. Micro-exchanges, fractional trades, economic movements so small they barely registered on standard monitoring systems. What the alien economists didn't realize was that Marcus was building something extraordinary. Each tiny transaction was a data point. Each seemingly random trade was a thread in a massive, distributed economic network that was taking shape beneath the surface of standard market interactions. He was creating an economic infrastructure that was simultaneously everywhere and nowhere. The Xyloxian market analysts were the first to notice something was wrong. Their predictive models, which had remained unchanged for centuries, began to show inexplicable fluctuations. Trading patterns that should have been impossible were emerging. Economic opportunities that defied traditional understanding were appearing. It's like the market is thinking, one senior Xyloxian economist muttered, staring at displays that seemed to pulse with an almost organic complexity. Marcus wasn't just trading. He was teaching the market to adapt. Human traders began to appear in economic sectors that had been closed to emerging species for millennia. They didn't compete in traditional ways. Instead, they created entirely new economic paradigms. A human trader working with a Korean manufacturing collective wouldn't just negotiate a standard contract. They would redesign the entire production model, finding efficiencies that the Koreans had never imagined. Dr. Elena Rodriguez watched the economic data streams from her monitoring station, a look of quiet satisfaction on her face. This wasn't just economic resistance. This was economic revolution. The truly brilliant part was how they were doing it. Every single transaction was technically within the Galactic Council's regulations. Each trade could be explained, each economic movement justified. But taken together, they were creating something unprecedented. a distributed, adaptive economic network that was more resilient than any centralized system. On the trading floors, alien economists began to look nervous. The humans weren't just participating in the market. They were reimagining what a market could be. Marcus Rodriguez executed another series of trades, each one a carefully calculated move in a game that only he could see the full board of. To an outside observer, it might have looked like random market noise. To those who understood, it was a symphony of economic innovation. The Galactic Council had tried to limit humanity's economic reach. Instead, they had just unleashed an economic force that would reshape galactic trade forever. And they hadn't even realized it was happening. The testing facility looked like a graveyard of technological mismatches. Repurposed mining equipment stood next to quantum processors. Old satellite components were wired into cutting-edge communication arrays. To any alien observer, it would have looked like a chaotic mess. To Dr. Aisha Okonkwo, it was a battlefield. The Galactic Council's technological restrictions were supposed to be a stranglehold. Limited access to advanced computing, strict caps on research funding, carefully monitored development channels, all designed to keep human technological progress locked in a cage. They had no idea that the cage was about to become a launching pad. "We're going to build a defense system," Aisha announced to her team, using nothing but equipment that most species would consider garbage. The challenge was deceptively simple. Develop a communication and defense network using only technologies that were explicitly permitted under the Galactic Council's restrictive guidelines. No quantum computing beyond specified limits. No advanced AI. No cutting-edge energy systems. What the Council didn't understand was that limitations were humanity's playground. Dr. Marcus Chen began by mapping out the seemingly impossible. A defense network built from repurposed communication satellites, consumer-grade electronics, and industrial monitoring systems. Each component was chosen with surgical precision, technically compliant, but capable of being transformed into something extraordinary. The first breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A team member discovered that a collection of outdated smartphones, when networked together in a specific configuration, could create a distributed computing system more adaptive than any centralized supercomputer. It wasn't just a workaround. It was a complete reimagining of computational architecture. "We're not breaking the rules," Chen muttered, a gleam in his eye. "We're revealing how meaningless the rules always were." The defense network began to take shape. It wasn't elegant by alien standards. It was messy, organic, constantly shifting. Satellite relays communicating through old radio frequencies. Industrial sensors acting as communication nodes. Consumer devices becoming part of a massive distributed intelligence. What made it truly terrifying was its unpredictability. Traditional alien defense systems were built on predictable algorithms. They anticipated threats based on established patterns. This human network was something else entirely. It learned. It adapted. It moved like a living thing. In the monitoring stations of the Galactic Council, technicians began to look increasingly uncomfortable. The reports coming in defied every standard of technological assessment. How do you defend against a system that doesn't fight like anything you've ever seen before? Dr. Elena Rodriguez oversaw the final stages of deployment from a secure facility. Each component was a piece of a larger puzzle, a technological ecosystem that was simultaneously everywhere and nowhere. The truly brilliant part was its compliance. Every single system could be explained. Every piece of equipment was on the approved list. But together, they created something that was functionally indistinguishable from magic. "Deployment complete," Aisha announced, her voice calm. On the monitoring screens, the network pulsed, a living, breathing technological organism that had grown from the very restrictions meant to contain it. The Galactic Council had tried to limit humanity's technological reach. Instead, they had just witnessed the birth of a defense system that would redefine the concept of technological warfare. And they hadn't even realized it was happening. The emergency session of the Galactic Council looked like a gathering of universes about to collide. Representatives from 200 sentient species sat in a circular chamber that defied conventional geometry, holographic interfaces flickering with data streams that told a story of increasing panic. Ambassador Zixtar of the Korean Collective stood at the center, their iridescent exoskeleton trembling with a mixture of rage and something far more dangerous, genuine fear. "We are experiencing a systemic failure of our control mechanisms," Zixtar announced, their translator rendering the words in 1,000 simultaneous languages. "The human species is not behaving according to any established predictive model." The data displays told a story of complete systemic breakdown. Economic networks that had been stable for millennia were now behaving like living organisms. Technological systems designed to be immutable were showing levels of adaptability that defied fundamental laws of technological development. Cultural exchange protocols were being transformed in ways no species had ever imagined possible. It wasn't just that humans were resisting. They were rewriting the entire concept of resistance. In the observation chambers, senior analysts from various species began to break down. The Xyloxian computational experts were the first to crack. Their predictive models, which had remained unchanged for centuries, were now producing nothing but statistical noise. It was as if humanity had introduced a virus of innovation into the very fabric of galactic civilization. "They're not fighting," one senior Xyloxian analyst muttered, staring at displays that pulsed with incomprehensible data patterns. "They're evolving." Dr. Elena Rodriguez watched the council session through a quantum-encrypted feed, a look of calm calculation on her face. This was more than a diplomatic confrontation. This was a fundamental challenge to how galactic civilization understood itself. The humans hadn't just challenged the system. They had revealed how fragile the system had always been. Each of humanity's seemingly independent actions, the economic innovations, the technological adaptations, the cultural infiltrations, were now revealing themselves as part of a larger, more complex strategy. It wasn't a single approach, but an ecosystem of resistance that was simultaneously everywhere and nowhere. Ambassador Kilera of the Trinary Concordance was the first to articulate what everyone was thinking. "We are dealing with a species that does not understand the word impossible," she said, her translation algorithms struggling to capture the full complexity of her statement. The truly terrifying part was how they were doing it. Every single action was technically within the established guidelines. Every move could be explained, could be justified. But taken together, they were creating something unprecedented. A form of resistance that wasn't resistance at all. It was transformation. The Galactic Council had tried to contain humanity by creating a box. Humanity had not only escaped the box, they had redesigned the entire concept of containment. Zixtar's final statement sent tremors through the chamber. "We are facing a species that does not comprehend the very concept of limitation." In that moment, every representative understood something fundamental had changed. This was no longer about controlling an emerging species. This was about understanding a completely new form of civilization. Humanity had not fought the system. They had simply shown how limited the system had always been. And they were just getting started. The final session of the Galactic Council was unlike any diplomatic gathering in recorded history. The circular chamber, usually a bastion of rigid protocol, now felt like a battlefield of unprecedented complexity. Ambassador Zixtar stood at the center, their once proud exoskeleton seeming to deflate under the weight of a singular, earth-shattering realization. Humanity could not be controlled. Dr. Elena Rodriguez sat among the human delegation, her presence both a challenge and an invitation. She wasn't there to argue. She was there to demonstrate. "We are prepared," she began, her voice cutting through the multilingual translation systems with crystal clarity, "to discuss our place in the galactic community." The words were simple. The implications were revolutionary. The Council had spent months trying to suppress humanity. Instead, they had created something far more dangerous, a species that understood limitation as an opportunity, restriction as a challenge, and adversity as a catalyst for innovation. The data presentations that followed were not pleas or defenses. They were demonstrations. Economic networks that had emerged from the Council's restrictions showed levels of efficiency and adaptability that made traditional galactic economic models look like ancient abacuses. Technological systems developed under severe constraints revealed capacities that redefined the very concept of technological progress. Cultural exchange protocols had transformed from controlled interactions to living, breathing networks of mutual understanding. Ambassador Keylera of the Trinary Concordance was the first to speak after Elena's presentation. "You have not just survived our restrictions," she said, her translation algorithms struggling to capture the complexity of her emotion. "You have thrived because of them." It was a pivotal moment. The Galactic Council was facing a fundamental choice: continue to resist humanity's emergence or recognize that a new paradigm of galactic civilization was emerging. Dr. Marcus Chen stepped forward, presenting a series of collaborative technological proposals. They weren't demands. They were invitations. Each proposal showed how human innovation could solve long-standing challenges that had plagued galactic civilization for millennia. The truly brilliant strategy was its approach. Humanity wasn't seeking to replace or dominate. They were offering partnership on fundamentally equal terms. "We are not here to conquer," Chen explained. "We are here to collaborate." The room fell silent. The implications were staggering. The Galactic Council had tried to keep humanity at the margins. Instead, they had midwifed the birth of a species that would redefine what it meant to be a galactic civilization. Ambassador Zixtar, speaking for the first time with something resembling respect, made a declaration that would be remembered for generations. Humanity is no longer a probationary species. Humanity is a partner. The words hung in the air, pregnant with possibility. Dr. Elena Rodriguez allowed herself the briefest of smiles. This wasn't a victory of force or technology. This was a victory of potential. Outside the council chambers, across countless worlds and solar systems, humans watched and understood a fundamental truth. Their greatest strength had never been in their weapons or their technologies. It had always been in their ability to transform any challenge into an opportunity. The game had changed, and humanity was just getting started.